اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم ولا يمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. آل محمد.
Mu'mineen are requested to recite Surah Fatiha for Al-Hajj. Muhammad Qasim Devji and Kul Mu'mineen and Mu'minat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي، فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي، من لي غيرك؟ أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تسجين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك. فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذئنا معترفا. لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني، ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي، يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأذجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك، أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك، أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوتا وترى مكانه، أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه، أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه، أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه، أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتقه منها فتتركه فيها. هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين. من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك، وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك. لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا، وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته، وكل ذنب أذنبته، وكل قبيح أسررته، وكل جهل عملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيته وبفضلك سترته، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة، وبخدمتك موصولة، وأعمالي لك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي، يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكيد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا رب نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لما لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء، يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنى. ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء، يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم. صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله، وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد
وآل
Surah An-Nisa, verse number 29, and Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 188. For this series, we are going to have printouts every week. For some, it might be a bit small for you on your phones. So I would recommend you taking those printouts and making the notes on the side, or for example, having a pen and pad and a space dedicated to this series, inshallah, where you can write your notes, or you can ask, write down any questions, and then inshallah you have that all in one place. So in advance, I'm making these recommendations to you that you bring pen and paper each week, and that if you take the copies, then you make notes, you annotate the printouts, or you're able to just write it in your own notebook, inshallah. Let us begin with a Surah Al-Fatiha for all of our marhumin. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تأكلوا أموالكم بينكم بالباطل إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم ولا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He is allowing us to be able to begin a new series, which is a study of this particular work, Islamic Commercial Law, by His Eminence Ayatollah Sayyid Fadil Husseini Milani, one of the leading scholars of the UK. May Allah protect him and preserve him, insha'Allah. Our series in studying this book is to be able to study what are the Islamic laws when it comes to business ethics, or transaction law, or contract law. And so all of us, whether we are inclined to business or not, have a responsibility to be able to understand those laws that are upon us. These laws cover all types of contracts, all types of agreements. So for example, whether you are getting married or not, there's a contract that you're entering into. If you are responsible for your family, then you are responsible to earn for them. If, for example, you are an employer or an employee, you are entering into a contract. If you are your own business owner, in every field of life, you can see how often we enter into contracts, and this is what is known as fiqh al-uqud. Aqd is the contract that we enter into. Uqud are the contracts. And within Islamic law, you will find that it is divided into different aspects. What we normally come across is the fiqh of ibadat, the fiqh of the practices of worship, such as our salah or our sawm or our hajj, for example. And sometimes we come across familial laws. Sometimes we come across those types of laws that might be for the state to participate in. And then there are those laws which are known as mu'amalat, those interactions that we have between ourselves, those engagements that we have between ourselves, and within that there are the business ethics and the business laws that are situated within mu'amalat. Our study, inshallah, will be to look at this particular book, Islamic Commercial Law by Ayatollah Milani. The reason why I've chosen this particular book is because it is easily accessible to us. It has recently been published. It is very easy to be able to read and breaks down much of our laws into very simplistic language and terms that are easily digestible for us, no matter what our position is, whether we are an employer or an employee, whether we are buying or whether we are selling, for us to be able to avail ourselves of some of the laws that we are so regularly participating in. In order to be able to expand upon this work of Ayatollah Milani, we're also going to be studying this book, Fiqh of Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salam by Ayatollah Jawad Mughniya, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. Ayatollah Mughniya was a phenomenal scholar from Lebanon, passed away now, and he has written 6 volumes called Fiqh As-Sadiq alayhi salam. And in these particular volumes, he looks at all of these various different contractual laws that we will engage in. And there are many ayat and ahadith that he brings that will expand upon the work of Ayatollah Milani. So this book is easily available from all good Shi'i bookshops, and I recommend people purchase it, people read it, have it available to them, especially as we're studying. For those parts that we're going to be studying, I will try to have it printed out. Those chapters that we're going to be looking at, we'll print those out and make them available to everyone. But of course, a book like this will be much more comprehensive, and so for anyone engaged in the world of business, anyone who's going to be entering into a contract, it is readily available for them, inshallah. What we're going to do tonight is to focus on 3 things, inshallah. Number 1, those ayat and ahadith which tell us the importance of studying Islamic business ethics and business laws. Number 2, we will also look at the opinions of our Maraji' al-Kiram. May Allah bless them. Have they told us studying Islamic business laws, contractual laws, is wajib or mustahab or mubah? I.e., is it something compulsory upon you to do, or mustahab, recommended for you to do? If it is wajib, to what extent is it wajib? Do you have to study the entire of the Risala Amaliyah? Or do you have to study particular laws? What are the opinions of our various maraji'? Number 2. And number 3, we will study one particular question. What are the different categories of Islamic laws? There are actually going to be 3 categories of laws, and then also 1 category of business ethics. Laws, sometimes you will find there will be those types of laws that the maraji' will say you can enter into your own transactions however you want. There's no restriction upon you. A second category of laws will be the maraji' will give principles to you. You and I have to avail ourselves of knowledge of those elementary principles, and when we enter into contracts, we navigate those contracts in accordance with those principles that they have set down. They won't tell you every single law. They'll tell you this is the principle, and you have to apply the principle yourself. And then the third type of law will be those laws which they specify. this is the way according to your marja, and you cannot come out of that. It's not a principle, it's a specific law that you are required to uphold. So we will explain that in terms of those three principles, and in doing so we will look at one chapter of law by Ayatollah Milani, which is printed out for you, called Bay' as-Salam, which is what? When you purchase something in advance. Let us imagine for a minute you are a grocer and you want to purchase directly from the farmer. So you purchase your stock 6 months in advance. Let us say you have a shop where you are selling t-shirts. You buy it from the wholesaler or the factory itself 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance. Can you just purchase as you want? Or are you required to purchase in accordance with certain Islamic laws that have been set down by the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? This is called Bay' as-Salam, to be able to purchase in advance. A lot of people in business will do this. They will purchase their stock 6 months in advance, 3 months in advance, for various different reasons. As we stated, there are certain types of laws where you are free to transact as you please. There is no condition upon you. There are other types of contracts where the Marajit will put down principles upon you. And then there are the third types of laws that will be strict, that you have to follow to the letter. Which of these laws apply here as an example? And the idea is only to introduce this to you tonight, so that you've got the introductory ideas with you, and then from next week, inshallah, we continue to look at specific topics, particularly from the book of His Eminence, Ayatollah As-Sayyid Milani, may Allah preserve him. At any point, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, ask them. I will take those questions that are pertinent to tonight's topic, and then if there are any questions that we are coming through in the series, we'll take those questions then. And if there are any questions that are beyond that, then we will try to take those as and when we can, inshallah, in this series. So as I recommend, please make sure that you note down these points as we are going through the series on your phones, in your notebooks, or on the sheets provided. And inshallah, we will go through this series together slowly, and then we will build up our knowledge of this particular series, inshallah. Let us begin with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Open your Qur'ans, inshallah, to two verses that we have stated. The first one is Surah An-Nisa, verse number 28. Chapter number 4, verse number 29. 28 and 29, but 29 is going to be the main verse, inshallah. Verse 29 is going to help us in two ways. Number one, it will give us the principle by which Islamic business laws are created. Before we come to that, the first question has to be, why are we studying this particular topic? There are so many courses that we could take. Why are we studying Islamic laws surrounding contract and business ethics? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides us a number of verses within the Quran regarding business laws and business ethics. Two I'm going to focus on tonight, inshallah, by way of introduction. The first type, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this verse that when business laws are corrupted, when we exploit one another through business, this can have a social impact where people can end up fighting one another and, God forbid, end up killing one another. You all know people that have fallen out over their business transactions. Sometimes it is family members, sometimes it's friends. So much of our life is based upon our work. Whatever work you're in, a business person, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a pharmacist, whether you're a seamstress, whatever your job is, you're constantly engaging with people in deals, in contracts. We often know how quickly people can fall out because money is something so important to us. In this first verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if we do not contract business properly, according to good ethics and Islamic laws, we can spill over into fights, abuses, exploitation, and even worse, potentially fallouts where people are harming one another. Have a look at this verse. Verse number 28 and 29. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. يريد الله أن يخفف عنكم وخلق الإنسان ضعيفا. Allah desires that He should make it light your burdens. Allah wants to make things easy for you, to remove restrictions for you, to be able to allow people to explore and to become successful. The problem is, man is created very weak. What is the meaning of this weakness? At one level, it is physical weakness. At the other level, it is also an internal weakness. We very quick to become envious, jealous, hot-headed, and all of this can burst into something very problematic. Verse 29, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately goes into a verse dedicated to business transactions. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batil. O you who believe, do not devour your property amongst yourselves in falsities. Do not rip each other off. Do not do something that is going to exploit the other person or take the wealth or the property of another person bil batil, in something which is false, something which is invalid. How should we contract ourselves? إِلَّا أَن تَكُونُوا تِجَارَةً عَن تَرَاضٍ مِنْكُمْ. But rather, you should be trading by mutual consent between yourselves. وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. And do not kill yourselves. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise this point? Do not kill yourselves. In the tafsir Al-Mizan by Allama Sayyid Tabatabai rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, Sayyid Tabatabai says that the reason why Allah immediately moves to do not kill yourselves is because we've seen time and time again in history that when people have exploited the other, when there has been corrupt economies, people have gone as far as killing one another because of these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying the way in which you should trade with one another, enter into contracts with each other, is antaradin, satisfied with one another, upholding these laws. Otherwise it can reach the extent that people actually massacre one another. Inna Allaha kana bikum rahima. Allah is merciful to you. So this is the first verse as why introduction. Second verse, chapter number 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 188. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us a very interesting verse, that we are not supposed to create contracts and laws within society that are means of exploitation and ripping one another off. If I asked you today, are the laws of business, are the laws of employment geared towards employers or employees, unions or fat cats? Are they geared towards those people who are business people, or is it geared towards those people who are the ordinary employee? Which one? The big guys? It's very interesting, isn't it? Look at this verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, verse number 188, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Allah repeats, do not swallow up your property amongst yourselves by false means. وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِّنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ. And do not seek to gain access to judges. Meaning, people who ultimately will be the deciders of how your laws are written, don't use your wealth and your power so that you can utilize them to bend the laws in your favor. Why? لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِّنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ, so that you do not swallow up property and wealth of people falsely. Basically, do not write the laws or try to write the laws in your favor such that the little guy is at a loss. You understand? That the laws in Islam are not favoring people to hoover up wealth from others. Rather, the laws are there to protect you and I. If we don't know what these laws are as an employer or as an employee, what is the potential? We end up actually going into business or creating businesses or working for businesses in things that are doing haram or participating in haram, or participating in exploitation or a type of contract that was actually against the values of Islam, or maybe against the actual laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the end of the verse. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, whilst you know what you do. Allah is saying there are people who know that they shouldn't be doing these sorts of contracts, but they actually do it. Warning us here that we should actually have knowledge of these particular laws. So these are two verses of the Holy Quran that gives us introduction to the importance of transaction laws from the perspective of the Holy Quran. Ahadith. There are a plethora of ahadith, almost in the hundreds, from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam about the importance of earning a good livelihood, halal livelihood, staying away from haram livelihood, whether you be an employer or an employee. Let us mention a few of them for barakah, and you'll actually see how important this particular issue comes. Hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says the following: Indeed, the archangel Jibreel blew into my mind that no soul shall pass away before the depletion of the sustenance that had been written for him. Your rizq has been written for you. You will not die before that rizq has been written for you, or that you have gained that rizq. So be wary of your duty to Allah and seek your livelihood through decent means, and let not a delay in your provision cause you to seek it through unlawful means. How many people go through a sort of a downturn in their livelihood, and some people go towards haram by way of seeking what is actually their sustenance. Another hadith, this time comes from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Worship, ibadah of Allah consists of 10 parts. 9 of them are related to earning a halal rizq, a halal livelihood. Another hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He who works hard to provide his family with lawful livelihood is like the one who does jihad in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes you're putting yourself in the situation where you have to control yourself. Just like you have to on the battlefield. That you don't harm someone or something unlawfully. It is the same way when you are earning a good livelihood. Another hadith from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Seeking a lawful livelihood is incumbent upon every Muslim man and woman. طلب الحلال فريضة على كل مسلم ومسلمة. So according to the hadith, it's a farida, it's a duty upon every single person. The last hadith, this hadith comes to us again from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. he who swindles a fellow Muslim brother, من غش أخاه المسلم نزع الله عنه بركة رزقه. Allah snatches away the blessings from his rizq and thwarts his effort to earn a good livelihood and relegates him to his own base desires. Can you see how important all of this is? So now we have the opinions of our maraji al-kiram. According to some of our maraji, learning those laws which are specifically related to your business, to your livelihood, to your speciality is wajib. According to other maraji', it is recommended. So of course it depends on your marja. But you can see here the very minimal is that there is a recommendation that whatever your specialty is in life, whatever your area of interest is, at the very least you should avail yourself of the laws that are going to affect you. Let us have a look at some of the opinions of our maraji al-kiram. I bring with me the Tawdih al-Masail by His Eminence Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Hussein al-Sistani. May Allah preserve him. He says the following. Page 372 in his book of transactions. It is recommended, Mas'ala 2059, it is recommended for a businessman to learn the rules of daily transactions. In fact, if due to ignorance he may necessarily contradict the laws of Sharia, then it is obligatory upon him to learn them. Can you see? The starting point of Sayyid Sistani is that the things that you are going to be specialist in or contracting in, it is recommended. But if out of ignorance there is actually a law that you might be so regularly participating in that you need to know about, and the likelihood is you're going to fall into sin, then actually it is wajib, it is obligatory upon you to be able to learn. And then Ayatollah Sistani quotes a hadith of our sixth Imam alayhi salam: a person who wishes to engage in business should learn its rules and laws, and if he makes any transaction without learning them, he may suffer because of entering into a void or doubtful transaction. Rule from Ayatollah Sistani. Summary of rulings according to the verdicts of Grand Ayatollah Shaykh Nasir Makarim al-Shirazi, may Allah preserve him, one of the grand maraji of our era. His book of Masail. The rules of selling and buying. Article, i.e. Mas'ala 722. It is obligatory upon every Muslim to learn the rules of business transactions to the extent of his need. Yes? So if you participate in a particular field of business, let us make an assumption. You are a lawyer, you are a doctor, you are a seamstress, you are a grocer. Whatever your area of business, whatever your area of expertise, there are certain things that are haram upon you, there are certain things that might be wajib upon you. According to the extent of the needs of your knowledge, according to Ayatollah Makarim, it is obligatory upon every Muslim to learn the rules of transactions to the extent of your needs. It is obligatory. I continue to read his mas'ala. It is obligatory upon the ulama to teach these rules to the people. So I am not alim, Shaykh is alim, but it is obligatory for the ulama to tell you about these rules. So I know many a times you'll have sat through many lectures. Be honest, how many times have you ever sat through lectures talking about the rules of business, the rules of uqud, the rules of your daily livelihood? None. I would argue very, very few times have you ever come across a series, yes? Ayatollah Makarim says it is obligatory upon the ulama to teach these rules. The same way it's obligatory for you to learn the masail of your salah and your sawm, he says it is obligatory upon every Muslim to learn the rules of the business transactions to the extent of your needs. If you're a doctor and you're being asked to switch off someone's life support, you need to know what the rules are. If you're going to have a shop and you're going to try to sell certain things and buy certain things, you need to know what is allowed and what is not allowed. These are the daily rules that you will come across. So these are some of the opinions of our Maraji al-Kiram. I hope that is satisfactory to this point for you to be able to understand so far. The second thing of this point is that not only are there laws, there are also ethics. Before we come to the laws, before we come to the ethics or some of the points about ethics, let us finish this point about business laws. Hadith comes to us from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. عن الأسبغ ibn Nubata. Asbagh bin Nubata, one of the closest companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Asbagh is such a close companion that according to some ahadith, he is the last companion to see Imam Ali alayhi salam alive. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam had banned all people entering into the house of Imam in the last hours when he had been struck on his blessed forehead. Asbagh basically doesn't stop knocking on the door of the house. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam says, look, Imam is dying. He can't sit with anyone now. Asbagh says, no, I have to see Imam Ali one last time before he dies. This is how close Asbagh is. عن الأسبغ ابن نباتة قال سمعت أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام. I heard Imam Ali عليه السلام say, يقول على المنبر. Imam was sitting on the pulpit. يا معشر التجار. Oh people, oh those who are businessmen and women. Oh gathering of businessmen and women. الفقه ثم المتجر. Learn the rulings, then go into business. And he actually repeats this 3 times. الفقه ثم متجر. الفقه ثم متجر. So Imam constantly said this. Now I'll tell you a story why this is so important for us. I have a friend, and I know he doesn't mind me telling you this story. May Allah bless him. He's a very good friend of mine. He came out of university with a very good degree. And he actually started working for a weapons company that produces weapons of mass destruction. BAE Systems. I'm sure you've heard of some of these companies, right? Raytheon, BAE Systems. Sometimes the British government sells its weapons directly from the military to Al Saud, to Bahrain and these sorts. And sometimes they allow the contracts from these companies like BAE Systems. He's a Shia brother, and he was working for BAE Systems. You know what his job was? He was an analyst for those bombs that used to go off in Yemen. The ones that Al Saud would actually drop from their warplanes upon fellow Shia in Yemen. His job was to collect the data and analyze the data. I don't know if you know about this. When they drop bombs, they can analyze whether the bomb went off properly or not based on the blast radius, how destructive the bomb was, how many people it killed, how many people it injured. So his job was to collect the data of massacred Shia who were fighting against Al Saud. Between me and you, what do you think? Halal or haram as a job? What do you think? Haram. We have the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amongst the things that are haram for you is for you to sell weapons to the enemies of Islam. This is one of the jobs that's prohibited in Sharia. So to do data analysis and collection to assist the enemies in making more precise bombings is of course haram. May Allah bless him. He came to me one day and he was feeling so guilty about this. And he asked, what should I do? I said to him, quit your job right now. Write your letter of resignation now in front of me. He said, no, but I'm getting married. I need the job. It pays really well. So you can immediately see that there's a problem here. May Allah bless him. Allah is my witness. I responded to him and said, quit your job. I promise you, you will find something the same value to you. And if you don't, Allah is my witness, I will pay you. I will pay your salary. I'll find someone to pay it for you. Just don't do this job. And then he came out with another argument. You know what he said? He said, no, if I can climb the ladder in this company, then maybe tomorrow I can reach a position and I can make a change within the business. I said, Habibi, you are lying to me and you're lying to yourself. Firstly, they don't allow people like you, good-hearted people, to climb the ladder in BAE systems. May Allah destroy this company tonight. And if they do allow you to climb the ladder, it's because you have sold your soul so much that they are using you as a face to say, look, Muslims, Shia are working in this business. Alhamdulillah, later on, maybe 1 or 2 months later, he did resign and he did get a really good job by the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You'll find today youth come out of university and they say all the time, you know, I'm going to go into this business. I know it's problematic, but I'll make a change. Brother, you won't. Don't lie to yourself. Sometimes I hear, it's a really well-paying job. I'll be able to give money back to the community. You know, we can, buy that masjid that the community needs, or we'll be able to do good with it. Brother, the community doesn't need your money. Allah huwa al-ghani wa antum al-fuqara. Allah is beyond rich. We are in absolute need. We are absolutely poor. We don't need that money. There are many people that are going into types of careers that are very problematic. Sometimes they're problematic, sometimes they are more than problematic, they are haram. People are going into banking industries, they are compelled every day to participate in interest. There are other people that are going into things that are making them sell things that are haram, buy things that are haram. We now have a sort of, TikTok and online generation that is making money from online. Everybody needs to know the rules that are upon them. What is halal for you and what is haram for you. And so I reiterate the point that even His Eminence Ayatollah As-Sistani is telling you, because the majority here, Muqallidin Sayyid As-Sistani, it is mustahab for you to learn your rules, and those things that are daily for you, and those things where you may fall into ignorance, it is wajib for you to be able to learn those rules. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The last point of our discussion for tonight is that there are business ethics, and then there are 3 types of laws in mu'amalat, in transactional laws. One are those laws that you are completely free to be able to make contractual agreements as you desire. The second are those where the Maraja al-Kiram will provide you with principles, and you need to avail yourselves of those principles and then understand your interaction with those principles. And then the third are those laws which are specified laws that you and I must stay within. As this is an introduction, I'm going to show you an example between these 3, or to explain to you the relationship between these 3, so that you are able to then, as we go through this series, we're able to navigate through these 3 a little bit more seamlessly. When I say this is something that you are free to make your own decisions on, you know it's within this category of laws. When I say to you this is something that you need to revert back to a principle, you know it's within these categories of laws. And when I tell you it's something that you are strictly supposed to adopt, then you know it's within these categories of laws. Return back to the Quran. Surah An-Nisa, same verse that we started with. Surah An-Nisa, chapter number 4, verse number 29. The very foundation of Islamic laws is this ayah. Chapter number 4, verse number 29. In ibadah is your salah, your sawm, your hajj, and so on. In the books of ibadat, the principle is Allah Jalla Jalaluhu tells you how to act, unless He tells you otherwise, unless He allows you freedom to be able to act in a particular way. Why? Because Allah knows how He wants to be worshipped. If He says this is how your sajda is, this is how it is. If He tells you this is how you wear your ihram, this is how you wear your ihram. So the principle is Allah informs you of ibadah unless stated otherwise. For example, if I said to you, unless stated otherwise, you have your qunut. You're free to be able to recite what you want in qunut. Nowhere does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say you have to recite Rabbana atina fid dunya. You're free to recite what you want. Understood? In mu'amalat, in transaction laws, in contractual laws, the principle is the opposite way round. The principle is you are free to contract contractual laws yourself, illa ma kharaja bid-dalil, except where an evidence, a shari'i evidence, a verse or a hadith says otherwise. You understand? In mu'amalat, you are free to be able to make your own transaction laws, except where Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in the Quran and Maraji al-Kiram have told you otherwise. Where does this principle come from? In this verse. Have a look at the verse. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batil illa an takuna tijaratan an taradin minkum. Your transactions are supposed to be an taradin minkum. Taradi means what? Satisfaction between yourselves. Rida, that you are pleased and happy to contract in this matter. The starting principle in mu'amalat, in fiqh al-uqud, is that you can create taradi between yourselves. You are satisfied with your own contracts. The principles, the conditions, the applications, it is upon you to decide what you want. Illa ma kharaja bid-dalil, except where there is a dalil, al-evidence from Quran and Sunnah to say otherwise. I'll give you an example of what the Marajit say about this. These are the laws of Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Taqi al-Mudarrisi, may Allah preserve him. In his Risala Amaliya, he says the following. Rulings, page 368. The basis for all economic transactions is the absolute freedom of the human being therein. The basis of all economic transactions is absolute freedom for human beings to contract whatever they want, so long as both parties A, consent, taradi, that there is consent and satisfaction between yourselves, and it falls within the framework of religious laws. Illa ma kharaja bid-dalil, except where there is an evidence, a shari'i evidence to say you cannot do this. So the starting point is for you to be able to do as you please, except otherwise. Let us see how this works, practically speaking, and then inshallah it allows us to be able to move into our series proper from next week. If you have a look, the printouts are there in front of you. We are looking at the book of Ayatollah Milani, And we're looking at the chapter of forward purchases, Bay' as-Salam, or what is also referred to as Bay' as-Salaf sometimes. Bay' as-Salam is anything that is purchased in advance. Read the opening statement. The conventional practice in contracts of sale requires both the commodity and the price to be exchanged immediately. Normally, the convention is that when you buy and sell something, you get something in return immediately. You go into Next, you pick up the t-shirt that you want, you pay £20, you get the t-shirt immediately. However, parties may agree in advance for the payment of the price to be made at a later date, referred to commonly here as sales on credit. Sometimes you will purchase something 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance, maybe even a year in advance. In addition, parties may also agree in advance to do the opposite, that is, to pay an agreed price for an asset that is to be delivered for a specific future time. Sometimes you want to redo your garden, so you need to purchase the slates in advance, the stones in advance, the bricks in advance. Sometimes you are purchasing something in advance. Sometimes there is a transaction where you're booking something to come in advance. That is, to pay an agreed price for an asset that is to be delivered at a specific future time, referred to in Islamic law as salam. Many people will read this as salam. It's not salam, it's salam. Salam, yeah? So if you want to just write it, it's not salam like peace, it's salam. Something that is advanced. Bay' as-Salaf or Bay' as-Salam. Bay' is like to sell something or to have transaction. Examples of this type of agreement, Ayatollah Milani says, are contractual agreements to purchase a farmer's crop or fruit in advance. So imagine you own a grocery and you want to buy from the farmer in advance. A lot of stock, right? You might have strawberries, you might have apples. You need to purchase it in advance, 6 months, right? Because they have to plant the seeds. Are you allowed to do this? And if so, are you free to be able to do it? Are there principles that must govern it? Or are there specifics that you have to uphold? Can you see? 3 types of laws that might apply here. We'll read on. In such circumstances, the buyer makes full payment for the crop, which he or she then needs to then wait to mature and ripen before it's delivered. This may apply to sales of oil and other things and so on and so forth. Next paragraph. We need also to explore the stipulated prerequisites that the ulama, that the jurists from various schools of thought have placed upon this particular type of transaction. So if you turn the page, you'll see the next subsection, prerequisites for capital investment, and then the next section, prerequisites for a purchased commodity. Now before we go and read that, I'm going to mention some of the ahadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam around this. So I mentioned to you, we'll also be studying the book of Ayatollah Jawad Mughniya to expand on some of these points, and this will allow us to be able to see how Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have spoken about this. So as an example, hadith from our 6th Imam Jaffer Ladak salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. لا بأس بالسلم في المبتاع إذا وصفت الطول والأرض وفي الحيوان إذا وصفت أسنانها. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, there's no problem in you doing Bay' as-Salam. He actually says the word salam. لا بأس بالسلم. No problem with you doing advance payments in anything that you're going to purchase, in any commodity that you're going to purchase, so long as what? إذا وصفت الطول والعرض, if you're going to actually set the requirements of its length, its breadth, its specifics. وفي الحيوان, and if you're going to be purchasing animals in advance, إذا وصفت أسنانها, if you specify the number of teeth it has. Now 10 points. Who can explain why? Brilliant. Are you a farmer? You sure? You just know how many teeth animals have. Ahsant. So can you just explain to us, what do you mean by the age is based on the teeth?
Well, they can't be too young. For slaughter, they must have, I think, 4 front teeth. And I don't know how many months there is, but there's an age limit of when it can be.
You can hear this? Yeah? Can you hear this? So there's an age limit. When you purchase an animal, depending on their age, they will have a certain amount of teeth, and so you know whether it's ready for slaughter or not. It's very interesting. So now, Imam alayhi salam is asked, وَالسُّئِلَ عَنِ الرَّجُلِ, a person asked the Imam about a forward purchase, a forward advance of a ghanam, of sheep, أَثْنِيَان وَالْجُدْعَان, a type of, or 2 types of sheep, that can I purchase these in advance of them being born? Imam alayhi salam said, La ba'sa bihi, no problem for you to purchase them. But the animal hasn't been born yet. You don't know what age it's going to be. You don't know what health it's going to be. The man specifically said, can I purchase al-athniyan wal-jud'an? Meaning what? Exactly as the brother said, that there are types of animals that when they are born with a certain number of teeth already. When a sheep is born, for the first 3 to 6 months, they have up to 8 teeth. Because the man specified, can I buy this type of sheep in advance? The Imam said, La ba'sa bihi, no problem with you buying it. Why? Because you've specified what you're buying in advance. And what about the other athniyan? After a year, the sheep's teeth fall out and a whole new set of teeth come in, a second set of teeth come in. Just like kids, like we had. So because the man asked about a specific transaction in the future, the Imam said, no problem. Had the man just left it general, the Imam would have said, sorry, you can't buy. And there's many other ahadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam about this. Now what our Maraji explain here is that when it comes to certain types of transactions, there are certain types of transactions you can purchase in advance, and there are certain that you can't purchase in advance. As an example, Ayatollah al-Mughniya says the following. وَقَالَ الْفُقَهَاء, the fuqaha, the ulama have said the following. يَصِحُّ السَّلَمْ, no problem, it's sahih for you to do bay' as-salam. فِي الْفَوَاكِهِ, when it comes to fruits, وَالْخِضَار, and vegetables, وَالْبَيْض, and eggs, وَالْجُوز, almonds, wal-luz, wal-alban, and things like milk, wal-asman, wal-atyab, spices, wal-malabis, buying clothes, wal-ashriba, wal-adwiya, medicines. Why? Because you are capable of specifying what you are purchasing in advance. The exact description of that thing, you are able to state, this is what I want to buy from you. I want it in advance, in this date with delivery. I want it to come with this amount. I want it to be of this quantity, this type, this specification. Those things which you cannot specify those details for, it is not permissible for you to be able to buy those things. I'll give you an example. وَقَالُوا, Ayatollah Mughniya says, لَا يَصِحُّ السَّلَمْ, it is not sahih, it is not correct. لا يصح السلم في الجواهر والآلاء. It is not permissible for you to, in advance, purchase things like jewels or things like pearls. Now, not everyone here, I imagine, is in the business of selling with jewels or jewelry. But there are, if you lived in Dubai, for example, there's a huge market when it comes to purchasing with jewels, right? Let's say you wanted to purchase pearls. You know, actually, in French Polynesia, the national exchange, the national, what's the word I'm looking for? Not currency, the national exchange. What's the thing that they nationally produce? Their national product. Their national product is pearls. Do you know that? Yeah? So if you're there, one of the largest industries you would likely be working is in pearls. It says you can't purchase pearls in advance. Why? Because the value of the pearl is based on its quality, the color of it, the size of it, the weight of it. Can you know that in advance? When they open up the clam, can they know in advance? No. So can you forward purchase something that you don't know the value of, the quality of? No. You understand? Now here, the maraji have different ways to be able to deal with this. And this is why I said, sometimes you are permitted to be able to make your own transactions. Sometimes the fuqaha will place upon you principles. And sometimes the fuqaha will place upon you laws. I'm going to read to you and then we'll conclude inshaAllah. He says the following, Ayatullah Mughniya. وَبَدِيهِيَةٌ It is evident أن الأقوال الفقهاء في مثل هذه البحوث والمسائل ليست بحجة. It is evident that the opinions of the maraji here cannot be hujjah upon you. It cannot be an evidence for you. Why? لأنها ليست من اختصاصهم في شيء ما دامت في تشخيص الموضوعات الخارجية لا في معرفة الأحكام الشرعية. The opinion of the maraji here cannot be hujjah upon you because they are not experts in each and every one of these fields. They are not business people. They cannot tell you every single ruling as to what you can purchase in advance and what you cannot purchase in advance, because they are not the experts in this field. Rather, inna wadhifat al-faqih, the role of the faqih here, the domain of the faqih here, أن يبين الحكم الشرعي الكلي مثل الغرر مبطل للبيع. Rather, the role of the faqih here is to be able to give you the principles and let you understand the principles. The principle here is bay' al-gharar. Anything that plunges you into undue risk, that you will not properly purchase what you are trying to purchase and you will lose your money, at that point it becomes haram for you to enter into that contract. You understand? If you enter into the contract and you're not able to specify the details, and as a result, it's more likely that you're going to lose your transaction, or it's going to be that something that's so risky for you, at that point it becomes haram for you to enter into it. The faqih has to put a principle down called gharar, which we're going to talk about more in a couple of weeks' time, inshallah. Gharar, undue risk, where you place yourself into so much risk that you cannot guarantee the safety of your contract, the security of your business transaction. At that point, it becomes haram upon you. It becomes prohibited for you to enter into that contract. This is Ayatullah Mughniya giving you principles. في المعول إذن على إمكان الضبط. Actually, it is dependent on your ability to specify your contracts. وليس من شك أن المرجع فيه هو العرف. And without doubt, وليس من شك, there is no doubt, أن المرجع, the point of reference here is not your marja, هو العرف, it is us. Because in our contracts, we know what is too risky and what is required in an individual contract. The marja places a rule, which is the principle, and you know that you are supposed to abide within those principles, he says. And then he quotes one of the most important fuqaha of our generation, and he quotes Sahib al-Jawahir, and he says the following. Ayatullah says the following: لقد أكثر الفقهاء من أمثلة للجائز والممتنع في السلم كما أكثروا في بيان الأوصاف للموصوفات. The ulama have gone to great lengths to try to describe for you every individual case of what you could possibly purchase in advance and not purchase in advance. However, the problem with this is it's not possible to exhaust every transaction, because you will go through so many transactions in your business career. The marja can't list every single one for you that says this is allowed and this is not allowed. You're all going to go through so many thousands of transactions. It's only limited the number of pages. ولا بأس به في الحيوان إذا وصفت الأسنان إتكالا على العرف. It is upon the urf to decide the understanding of some of these matters. فكان الأولى بالفقهاء أن يتركوا ذلك إلى العرف. It is upon the faqih to leave that matter to the urf themselves that understand their contractual laws. Sometimes the marja will give to you a principle and say, if this contract puts you into too much danger, it's not permitted for you to be able to go into it. Return back to Ayatollah Milani. Ayatollah Milani gives us specifics of what type of advanced contract you could engage in and not engage in. Prerequisites for capital investment. For a salam contract, an advance payment, to be valid, the capital invested must be stated as being a specific sum of money. It is not acceptable to simply state that it's going to be $10,000 without being specific as to whether it's 10,000 American dollars, Australian dollars, or Malaysian dollars. Now that's obvious. No one here would put a contract without explaining. But what Ayatollah Milani is trying to explain at the very most basic level is, if you don't specify the details of your advance payments, and there's a risk to you that you're going to lose your money because it's so vague, you fall into gharar. You fall into a transaction that's too risky for you. The more you specify, the more protected you are. And as long as the urf, me and you, who are specialists in this area, say that you are protected in this contract, it is jaiz for you to make this contract. If anyone ordinarily or specially looks into that contract and says, you're not protected here, you're not protected here, you didn't specify this, you didn't specify that, the contract is invalid according to Islam. Prerequisites, turn to the next page. Prerequisites for a purchased commodity, or that next section. Read it through. The nature, number one, the nature of the commodity must be specified as being, for example, wheat, barley, dates, apples, clothes, whatever you're buying. Number two, you must specify its classification. For example, having been watered by rainfall or mechanical irrigation. You might want it to be organic, you might want it to be this, you might want it to be that. Its grading, number three, such as being prime quality or of a slightly lesser quality. Sometimes you know that we purchase lesser quality things. Why? Because we know we can sell it at a cheaper rate. Number four, you have to specify its weight and volume. Number five, it could lead to some sort of usury. You must specify whether it's part of riba or not. If it is, then it's haram. You have to specify, number six, its delivery date. Number seven, the probability that the commodity will exist. Number eight, the absence of any circumstance that permit unilateral withdrawal from the contract. The other side can't say, you've given me the deal, but I can pull out whenever I want. Number nine, the place of the delivery must also be specified. And then he continues, other Sunni schools argue about the above mentioned prerequisites. However, Allama al-Hilli, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, one of our greatest scholars, summarizes the extensive list by saying, all the qualities that you require that may contribute to the value of what you are purchasing must clearly be specified in the advanced contract in order for it to become valid in the eyes of Sharia. Can you see? What you can see here is Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam gave us certain ahadith regarding questions that they were asked about Bay' as-Salam. The fuqaha then provide us with principles, and then they provide us with specific laws. We are going to contract so many laws in our lifetime, the Marajik cannot write every single one of them. It's not possible. Therefore, at times you need to revert back to those principles, and at times you need to revert back to the specifics of the rulings. And these are the three types of contractual laws that you'll be allowed. To be able to make contracts as you please, to be able to make those based on principles, and those based on specifics. Tonight, what we have done is introduced the series and talked about the importance of this series. That sometimes your maraji' say it's mustahab for you to learn your rules, and sometimes it's wajib for you to learn your rules. And secondly, we've introduced three types of contractual laws, and inshallah from next week we will continue on and start to look at the question of who can make a contract and in what circumstances are you allowed to make your contract. Adnan here, for example, how old are you? 16? Is he allowed to make contracts in Islam? Nazir, how old are you? 11. Is Nazir allowed to make a contract or not? If so, what types of contracts? Is he allowed to go into Tesco's and buy chocolates? Is he allowed to make a will? Is he allowed to give sadaqah? We'll answer this inshallah next week. Who is allowed to make a contract and under what circumstances? We mentioned Asbagh bin Nubata. He knocks on the door of Imam Ali alayhi salam's house. Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam says to him, Imam is too weak. A poison is running through his body. There is but a few hours left. We have sent everyone away. Asbagh says, I need a few minutes with my master. I want to be able to do the ziyarah of Ali ibn Abi Talib one last time. When a companion begs the Imam like this, the generosity of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, the patience of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam gives way. Asbagh enters into the house. As soon as he enters into the room where Ali ibn Abi Talib is lying down on his deathbed, he bursts into tears. Amir al-Mu'mineen responds by saying, Oh Asbagh, your Imam is still alive. Why are you crying like this? Asbagh says, I have never seen you in such a pitiful state. Do you know what the narration says? The turban of Imam Ali alayhi salam had turned yellow from the pus and the bile that was pouring out of the head of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Can you imagine the color of the face of Ali ibn Abi Talib? Can you imagine the physical struggle that Ali ibn Abi Talib was going through at this moment? Oh, my Imam, I've never seen you in such a pitiful state. The narration says that when Ali ibn Abi Talib passed away from this world, Kufa shook as if there was an earthquake taking place. And everyone around was knocking on the door, asking for news, asking for Imam, wondering who is going to be our Imam, who is going to be our Caliph, who is going to protect us. But you can imagine, especially the orphans and the widows, asking, Ya Allah, now who is going to protect us after Ali? Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we're to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we can partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, help us to understand the rulings that are upon us based upon our speciality, based upon our employment and requirement. Ya Allah, there are many people around the world going through such desperate times, those people in a state of war and oppression, poverty, homelessness, disease and disaster. Ya Allah, grant them all safety, security and victory for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah of Ali ibn Abi Talib fi dunya wal akhirah. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In honor of Ali ibn Abi Talib, let us have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. If there are any questions, maybe we'll take just two and then we finish with the ziyarah. Because this is an introduction If there's anything about the introduction that anyone wanted to ask, then we're happy to take them, inshaAllah.
So you mentioned the examples in relation to buying physical products.
Yes.
What about services or those items which are physical? So, for example, currencies, stocks, shares, things like that.
So the principle will remain the same. The most important principle here is gharar, which is risk, or rather undue risk. We will, inshallah, in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, go through in detail the meaning of risk in Islam. It is risky for you to be able to put money into a share, correct? But when people do it, they have a reasonable expectation that the share price will go up. Therefore, it's not risky. Risk is when you have not done your due diligence, or the specialist will tell you that you have not protected yourself in this contract or in this investment such that you are likely to be able to lose out because of your haphazardness, because of your, what's the word I want to look for? Because you have not been diligent enough. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you were to buy land. Yeah? If you were to purchase land on which underneath there sat a bog that would not be sturdy enough for you to be able to build upon or sell again in the future, it would make it unsellable or unbuildable. If you did not do your due diligence, that would be gharar. Now most people would do it, wouldn't they? But at this point, the shari', the divine legislator, Allah, intervenes and says, you have a duty to protect your investment, and I have a duty to tell you what you're going to do is haram. At that point, it becomes prohibited for you. And I'm giving you an extreme example. Most people would never be able to buy land without making sure that it is sustainable for them. But there are some people that might do something like that. There are many houses that are sitting on a cliff edge. Cliff edge is withering away over 20, 30, 50, 80 years, correct? It's available for you to purchase. People will purchase it. It's looking over the cliff edge. It has a beautiful sunrise, sunset. It's worth a lot. But there's gharar in it. There's such obvious risk that if you purchase it that you know you might actually lose out. At that point, the Shari' intervenes and says, the gharar here, the ordinary or expert opinion would tell you that this is an unwise thing to do. It might be at that point the mujtahid tells you it's haram. Ayatollah al-Mughniya said, the mujtahid cannot tell you it's haram. Why? Because he's not an expert in this field. Who would you go to for experts? The surveyor. Yeah? If the surveyor tells you you're alright, you're alright. If the surveyor tells you problems here, I don't advise it, it will be haram for you. You may still want the property. It looks so nice, it's overlooking the sunset. Baba, it doesn't matter, it's haram for you because the expert has told you it's gharar. Can you see? Do you understand? You're free to invest where you want, but the marja will place principles for you and at times will place specifics. In such an example, in the first case, when it comes to land where there is a bog underneath it, we can be specific. It's so obvious that you are entering into gharar, haram for you to purchase. In the second case, with a house overlooking a type of land that has a receding cliff edge, the marja cannot tell you it's haram because he's not an expert in it or she's not an expert in it. They will refer you back to the surveyor. Depending on what the surveyor tells you, that will be whether it's haram for you or not. Yourself, principles, specifics. Does that answer your question? Ahsantum. Inshallah, we'll finish with Ziyarat Warith. Let's be upstanding so that we can remember the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.